Hi, I'm Jennifer Brown, editor of Canadian Lawyer In-House Magazine. In this version of the Weirfolds quiz, we're looking at ensuring timely responses to access to information requests. I'm joined today by Jill Doherty and Mac Allen of Weirfolds LLP. Jill, let's say an institution receives its first request for information of the year and it falls on a Friday. How much time do they have to provide written notice to the requester of their decision?
Well, it depends. The legislation requires the head of the institution to give written notice as to whether or not access is going to be granted to the record, either in full or in part. And if access is going to be granted, then the head is required to provide that access. But this is subject to a number of exceptions. For example, it's subject to the ability to extend the time frame for doing this in certain circumstances, and it's also subject to the possibility that the request will be transferred to another institution, or the possibility that the request will be forwarded to another institution. Lastly, the requirement to provide notice and access, if you're going to supply access, is subject to the requester paying the relevant fees for access. So in our example, assuming that the Friday is the first of the month, then the response is going to be due on the 30th of the month, which would fall on a Saturday. So technically, the response isn't due until Monday, assuming that Monday is not a holiday, and assuming that the institution is closed on the weekend. Frankly, as the course of caution, better to give your response on the Friday before the deadline, just to be safe.
And Mac, in what situations can an institution extend the time period to respond in a reasonable period of time?
An institution can extend the 30-day time limit to respond to a request in two separate circumstances. The first is where the request is for a large number of records, and responding to the request within the time limit would unreasonably interfere with the institution's operations. The second instance where an institution can extend the 30-day time limit is where consultations are necessary with a third party, and those consultations can't necessarily occur within the 30-day time limit. An institution must be aware of its statutory obligation to respond within a reasonable time and must be prepared to justify any extension of time as reasonable in the circumstances. Circumstances to consider include, but are not limited to, whether the searches have been conducted in the past, whether the searches have already been conducted, whether or not the work required to conduct the searches is unduly burdensome on the staff, the amount of time that's going to be required by the staff to devote to the search, and any challenges faced by the institution in conducting the search and preparing the documents.
Okay, thanks, Mac. For more on this and other issues related to access to information, please see the April issue of Canadian Lawyer In-House Magazine.